Hi, everyone, and welcome to the end of summer in the Northern Hemisphere and the beginning of September, starting tomorrow. September 1st is, and Labor Day in the US anyway, is sort of like a second new year, a good time to launch things, to get things moving. Sort of a warm up to the actual new year, where we can both complete the things we maybe didn't get done yet in 2022, and where we can get ourselves in the place we need to be in order to have a strong 2023. And so there's kind of a big thing happening tomorrow, something that I'm excited about, proud about, and a little bit nervous about. And I'm going to tell you about it. We're launching something called Changemakers at Work. And Changemakers at Work is an online professional development community for people who want to make a bigger difference at work. People who want to take their career and their lives back into their own hands in a bigger way so that they can do their, what I would call their true work, or follow their sense of life calling. What is life calling them forth to do? And I'm a huge believer in this because I've had a couple of wake-up calls in my life, which I won't go into detail on right now, where I had a reckoning. I had some challenges that came up that unless I was doing work that mattered, I don't think I could have kept going. Or I'm not sure how I would have survived those tough times. But I want you to know something, and that is that this Changemakers at Work community is not just for people that label themselves change makers. It's also for people who want to do more, to make a difference in their workplace and in their world, and something's stopping them, holding them back. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I want to tell a little bit about my story into change making. I didn't set out to be a change maker. In fact, I followed all at least the big rules. I got good grades. I went to college, got the degree, and got the consulting job at a big firm, a Big 8 firm in the mid 80s. That's what they were, and at Anderson Consulting. And, it was sort of in pursuit of the American dream, because that's what I grew up believing and thinking was, this is what you did. I came from a family of farmers. I was the first member of my family on both sides of the family to graduate from college with a 4-year degree at Clarkson as an engineering and management major. So I followed all the big rules, but I also colored outside the lines, and I questioned authority. Ask my mom. and even in high school and college, I questioned authorities, and I colored outside the lines just a little bit, just enough to know that I was staying true to myself. At least I think that's what I was doing, because that's what it felt like. So I actually chose my first job because it had a really good rule book. It had a methodology for doing large projects. And in those days, the methodologies were binders and binders and binders. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a recipe for success in this rule book, in this methodology. I can follow a recipe. I've been doing it my whole life. I realized that most of my classes had sort of a recipe for how to get an A. And so I was excited to join a company that had such a well thought out, structured set of methodologies for doing complex projects. But as I got beyond my first few years, I couldn't help but notice that following the rules and methods didn't always work. They didn't always work out for clients. They didn't always work out in terms of the team and employee needs. And so there were rules, I realized, rules, methods, processes, and systems, and also social and political norms inside of these organizations that needed to change. And so I was often pulled into change and innovation roles to help lead those changes. Other times I worked to change things from the bottoms up, joining or initiating skunk works, for example, the Green Army at IBM. So I didn't set out to be a change maker, but I gravitated there, sort of on my own. And when I was pulled into formal change leadership roles at large companies, at first, those first few years felt like an emotional roller coaster. And, I can say that I was excited by the change work itself. When it was going well, it felt so good to be making a difference, to be putting in, really a lot of hours, sometimes extra hours, because some of these things I was doing were, so compelling that I really, really worked hard. But other times I struggled to get traction and buy-in, and I couldn't figure out why. It felt like I was pushing a rope, or I would say rolling a boulder uphill, only for it to roll back down over the top of you half the time. And and so that was the roller coaster part of it. It was so full of ups and downs, but my passion fueled me. It fueled me, and it also got in my way, which I didn't really understand at first. I had blind spots I needed to uncover, discover, and I had a lot of beliefs about how things should be, in some ways righteous or self-righteous beliefs about the way things should be, that I had to let go of. I had to learn to come in and meet the people, the system, the energy of the system, the norms, kind of meet people where they were at, and really connect with compassion to the current reality in order to be trusted and wise enough to tinker with it, to begin to unleash the change that wanted to happen inside those systems, as opposed to driving the change that I thought the system needed. That's a huge differentiator, right? That's a huge difference in the way that I've learned to lead change. You can come in and drive it with a hammer and a clarity and a passion of, this is what it needs to be like in order for it to work. And that kind of doing change to the system, on the system, when that system is actually just a group of people trying to do their best, that is what causes resistance. That is what backfires. So if you've experienced resistance, you know this, but how do you overcome it? I had a lot to learn, and I worked hard, and sometimes I worked too hard. And eventually I did facilitate some really successful change initiatives that I'm proud of today. And along the way, what I realized is a lot of the work that I needed to do to make the change happen out there or over there in this corporate system or in this industry had to begin on the inside. I actually had to do my inner work of change in order to become effective in my outer work that enabled actually more organic and transformative change. And I learned a lot of tools and made a lot of mistakes along the way. I built up this toolkit that I feel in a way so responsible to bring forward now and share, because it was hard won. At times I teetered on the edge of burnout, as many of you probably have and maybe are. And I thought about leaving many times, but I stayed for 28 years inside of corporate systems. And I really worked and learned to navigate to the next place of learning and impact for me. One thing that I am blessed with is this strong inner compass. Once in a while, it dims a little bit and I go off course, but I always feel it. I always feel it. And it even happened to me a year ago. I felt a little bit off course and I knew I needed to get back on track. So I have this strong inner compass that I want to make sure that, by the way, you have too. We all have it, right? But tuning it up is part of Changemakers at Work. Part of our responsibility as leaders is to become much more connected to what our heart, what our soul, what our intuition, what our gut, not just what our head tells us to do. It's really more about having that coherence, that congruence across head, heart, gut, and soul that has me know that I'm on the right track. So we'll be addressing a lot of these inner development challenges and goals in Changemakers at Work, with our work with each of you when you're ready to join us. So I've said it, over the years, I learned a lot about where I went wrong and what I got right. And I have since dedicated my career to finding a better way to lead change that matters to you, to me, and to future generations. So that's what I wanted to share and what I will be sharing with you inside Changemakers at Work. Now, the simple fact is that change takes courage. It's hard to push ourselves with new challenges and to overcome obstacles that have been standing in our way for most of our lives. But in a community of people like us who are on the same journey, everything gets easier. And I so wish I had had this kind of community when I was doing the heart of my, learning in the mid 2000s and all the way through, frankly. It's challenging to go it alone. A lot of times you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you don't feel understood, you don't feel appreciated, respected. And you still have to find the energy and the courage to keep going, which is why so many people are burning out, dropping out. And what people are saying, they're silently quitting. There's two camps on that, right? There's the camp that says that's just sort of laziness. It's not a good work ethic. And then the other camp is kind of saying, wait a minute, these people are doing their jobs. They're just not doing the extra 30% that seems to be being pushed on them through the cultural norms of overwork, constant meetings, and this culture of grit and sort of constant striving for more. And so I think that in between those two things, there's something else. And that's what we're going to try to tap into in this community is like, we don't want you to silently quit or to drop out. But how about thriving? How about blooming where you're planted? So in the Changemakers at Work online community, you'll practice using new tools and frameworks in an intimate and private group space with other leaders who have similar values and they're on the same journey. You will hear how other leaders are solving similar issues and challenges, and you'll get the chance to share your own wisdom and experience and also be witnessed during your own journey as you overcome these challenges. We design action-based learning with practical tools that I've used over and over again for 30 years that you can apply on the job right away. So this is practical stuff. It's not all about theory. In fact, it's much more about rolling up your sleeves, trying, learning, picking yourself back up, adjusting, and trying again. And then another important thing about doing this in community, systems change is about working with other people. And systems change leaders, therefore, need to be aware of and understand and correctly read system dynamics, human system dynamics. And that includes understanding our personal impact on the system. What is the role that we're playing in creating the beauty and the mess of the system we're in, of the culture that we're part of the cultural norms that we're either standing up for or breaking or changing. We have to become so much more aware, self-aware, and systems aware in order to be leaders of change, effective leaders of change. And this community will provide really a space for this kind of learning, sharing, reflecting, sense making together, sort of behind the scenes in a penalty-free zone where you can share not just success, but also failure, and become more comfortable with the idea of being open, honest, and true, and vulnerable in service of learning. So let's lean into this and learn with each other as we share the trials and triumphs of leading change in a supportive environment of like-minded peers. You don't have to go it alone anymore. That's great news. And I want to sort of end with this. The capacity to lead change that matters lives inside of each and every one of us. I think it lives here. And we each have to find the courage, by the way, which also lives, I think, here, and a little bit of will here in our guts, so our heart and our guts. So we each have to find the courage, core is heart, to act and to make our unique difference. And we are in a day and age where our collective future depends more than ever on what we are doing every single day of our lives, at work and at home. We spend 129,600 minutes a year on average at work in the United States and in developed countries. And you know what? I don't know about you, but I don't want to be asleep at the wheel. I don't want to be going through the motions. I want to be on the dance floor, and I want to be trying new moves, and I want to make it fun and challenging and meaningful and impactful. And I want it to matter, because in the end, for me, work is an act of love. I don't want it to be an act of obligation. I don't want it to be an act of just feeding my family, which is also an act of love. I want it to be an act of love on behalf of the world that I want to create and the legacy I want to leave behind. I want to be proud to know that I was part of a generation faced with some of the most challenging global systemic issues of all time, some of which we contributed to creating ourselves unknowingly, without blame, in the name of progress. And we have made progress as a species in so many ways. But here we are at this point in time where we need to kind of get things back in order in such a way that we can live sustainably on this planet in an ongoing way beyond the next 50 or 100 years. And so I call on each of us to take on this challenge. And really, it's the greatest opportunity of our lifetime. So the journey begins on September 1st. Please join us for the open house and of Changemakers at Work and our launch kickoff at noon Eastern on Thursday. You'll find the details here, below this video somewhere magically. And I can't wait. I can't wait to meet you again to re-meet you under these circumstances, or to meet you for the first time if you're just kind of getting to know me. See you soon.